slavery. And basically, that's when especially people of the African American descent were enslaved right here in this country, especially in these regions over here. And what would happen many times is that many times they will be lynched, many times they will be taken into plantations, worked until death, and all of these different things. And one time there came a story about a young man, a young slave that was existing around this time. And basically this slave had been shifted from plantation to plantation. And so the slave was kind of strong. He wasn't, for me, I'm kind of small. But this slave was strong. He had some muscles. And so the slave was taken from one plantation. He was worked so hard, and then he would be taken to another plantation. Worked so hard, taken to another plantation. Worked so hard, taken to another plantation. And the slave finally was going to be sold again. And when the slave was about to be sold again, the slave was so bitter because he had been taken from plantation 1 to plantation 2, plantation 3, and plantation 4. And so the slave was on the auction block because that's where they would have them sold. And when he was on the auction block, rage and bitterness was within his heart. And as he was there, the different people were saying, all right, we got a slave right here. He's about 25 years old, strong boy. Make him turn around, make him show his back once or twice. And as they'll do that, they'll say, we're selling him. Anyone? 500? 500? Going once? Going twice? No? Someone bids. Oh, 800. Okay, 800. We're going for 800 at this moment. No, not 800. How much are you bidding? 1,000. 1,000 at this moment. And then someone raised up their hand in the congregation and they said, I'll pay 1,500 for that slave. 1,500 for that slave. Going once. 1,500 going once. 1,500 going twice. 1,500 going 3 times. Sold. Slave is sold. 1,500. Slave is bitter. Slave doesn't have much. Gets off the auction block. Starts going with the man, and the man puts him on his horse and buggy. And the man begins to take the young slave back home to the plantation. And as they're riding back home to the plantation, as they're riding back home to the plantation, all of a sudden, the horse and buggy stops. The slave master looks back at the young man. Young man, get down. From this point on. And the master looks at him and says, young man, from this point on, you are free to go. Free? Master, he said, what? I said, you're free to go. Go on, get your clothes. You're free to go. Free. You're free. You're free. Go on your way. And the young slave never heard those words in his life before. He picks up the little that he has and he doesn't even know where to go. He's a slave. He's been free. And he starts walking and he's like, I'm free. And he starts moving and the master said he's free. And he's going. And as the master's pulling away, the young slave is so excited. He said, I'm free. I'm free. And all of a sudden, as he's moving away, the young slave stops. Looks back. Master, wait! Wait, master, wait! Wait. Wait for what? The slave's running back. Slave's running back. Slave's running back. The slave is running back and he stops the master. And the master says, look, I told you were free. You were free to go. Why are you back here? And the slave said, master, I need to tell you something. Stop calling me master. I told you were free. Why are you coming back here? And the slave looks at the young man and says, master, thank you so much for setting me free. And the master looks at him and he says, and master, because you have set me free, this day, master, because you have set me free, I desire to serve you forever. Because you have set me free, master, I want to serve you forever. And in Exodus chapter 20, verse 2, when God says, look, I am the Lord your God, who brought you from the land of Egypt, who freed you from the house of bondage. God was saying, look, I am the one who loved you when no one else loved you. I am the one who cared for you when no one else cared for you. I am the one who heard you when no one else heard you. And because I am setting you free, children of Israel, would you serve me forever? And any spiritually minded Israelite will look at God and say, yes, Lord, because you have set me free, because you have delivered me from the house of bondage, because you have taken me from the house of slavery, Lord, yes, I will serve you forever. And in the same sort of way, each and every Israelite, because they will see that God has set them free, they will serve him forever. And so the Israelite will look at God and say, God, because you have set me free, I will put no other gods before you. I will give you my affections, commandment 1. Lord, because you have set me free, I will make no idols. I will give you my body, commandment number 2. Lord, because you have set me free, I will not take your name in vain, giving you my words, commandment number 3. Lord, because you have set me free, I will keep your Sabbath holy, giving you my time, commandment number 4. God, because you have set me free, I will honor my father and my mother, commandment number 5. Lord, because you have set me free, I'll preserve life in my words and in my actions, commandment number 6. Lord, because you have set me free, I will be faithful to my spouse, commandment 7. Lord, because you have set me free, I will avoid stealing, commandment 8. Lord, because you have set me free, I will be truthful in all my dealings, commandment number 9. Lord, because you have set me free, I'll be content with all I have, commandment number 10. Because you have set me free, I will serve you forever. And from this, we gain the first clarification for the 10 commandments. And it's very simple. The clarification is this: God never gave the commandments to keep in order to be saved, but the commandments were given because when one was saved, they will naturally be kept. If you look at the experience of the Israelites, did he give them the commandments first, or did he save them from Egypt first? He saved them from where? From Egypt first. And then after he saved them from Egypt, he gave the commandments. And he did it to show that the commandments are not there in order for you to keep it, to say that it's my commandment keeping that has saved me. It is my Sabbath keeping that has saved me. It is my avoiding to lie that has saved me. But he says, no, you are saved by virtue of the blood on Calvary. You are saved by virtue of my sacrifice on the cross. And because you are saved, I am empowering you, I am enabling you to keep my commandments. You are saved first, then he produces obedience. And so if that's the case, then it sheds some light. It gives us some clarification to all of Paul's statements in the New Testament. Because Paul agrees with this fundamental supposition within the Bible that the commandments were never there intended to save me, but a saved person will keep the commandments. And so that's why when you read the writings of Paul, Paul can say in Romans chapter 3, verse 23a, he can say, for by the works of the law, no human being will be justified in the sight. Translation, by keeping the commandments, you won't be saved. You can look in Galatians 2, verse 16. He says, knowing that a man is not justified by the works of the law, but faith in Jesus Christ. Translation, keeping the commandments, you will never be saved. But a person is only saved if they put their faith in Jesus Christ. But then Paul understands that if a person puts their faith in Jesus Christ will put his law within their hearts. Look at the evidence. Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 32 to 34. He says, behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a covenant, a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, declares the Lord, I will put what, everyone? My law within where, everyone? Within them, and I will write it on their what? On their hearts. He will put it in your heart. Notice, people look at the old covenant and new covenant and say, well, the new covenant has no commandments. Notice the text. There's not an absence of the law. There's a replacement of the law. He will put it in your heart. He will put it in your heart. You put it in your heart. And if he puts it in your heart, then keeping the commandments become a natural process. Now here, with this point, leads me to clarification number 2. if God will put the 10 Commandments within your heart, then a clarification is needed. The 10 Commandments were never meant to be kept in one's own strength, but through a relationship with God in Christ, God will put the 10 Commandments in your heart. Have you ever seen a person trying to keep commandments in your own strength? I'll give you a story. There was a young man, he was in a class. When he was in class, everyone was standing up, and the teacher said, look, I need everyone to sit down. So everyone in class sits down, but the young man stays up. The teacher looks at the young man and said, young man, I said sit down. He's like, no, I want to stand up. I said sit down. No, I want to stand up. And the teacher goes to him and said, I said sit down. He's like, I want to stand up. Teacher was kind of big. Kid was kind of small. He puts his hand on the teacher's shoulder. You know this is not America. Puts his hand on the teacher's shoulder, and then what he does is that he presses the kid back into the chair. And when the kid is pressed back into the chair, the kid looks at the teacher and says, you know something, teacher? I'm sitting down with my butt, but I'm standing up in my heart. And in the same sort of way, when many people try to keep the commandments in their own strength, they may be sitting down with their butt, but in their hearts, they're not really truly keeping. They may be saying, look, I'm obeying God in my outward, but I'm not obeying God within my heart. And many times when you try to keep your commandment with your own strength, you can produce an outward correction, but you'll never produce a heart religion, a true relationship with God. And many times what will happen is that it will lead to two things. Number one, it will lead to frustration. Number two, it will lead to comparison. And so frustration, when you try to keep doing this thing by your own strength, when you try to keep righteous through your own efforts, you start getting frustrated because you look around and you say, you know something? I keep trying, but I keep failing. I keep trying, but I keep failing. I keep trying, but I keep failing. Does everyone understand what's going on? It leads to frustration. But number two, not only does it lead to frustration, but it also leads to what, everyone? What's the second one? It leads to comparison. And what do we mean by comparison? And so this is what I mean by comparison. Some people, because they're trying to keep this on their own strength, when they get a few victories, they'll start to say to themselves, man, you know what? I'm actually righteous because I kept these commandments. I'm actually holy because I did this on my own strength. And actually, Brother A back there is not as righteous as me, is not as holy as me. And so they start a comparison that we call ruler theology. And basically with ruler theology, there's a big ruler. And in this ruler, they see this ruler as God's standard. And we see this ruler as God's standard. The person looks at God's standard and calls it perfection. And then he or she locates him or herself on this ruler. And when they locate themselves on this ruler, they look above the ruler and they say, I'm cool, but Brother A is kind of better than me. But I know that Brother B is not better than me at all based on my own efforts and my own strength. And so because of that, the person says, I must constantly work to demonstrate to myself and to God and others that I'm trying. And the outcome is comparison. They look at themselves and say, I'm not doing as well as person A, but at least I'm doing better than person B. This type of religion is ugly. And this is the type of religion that many people get themselves into. And the tragic results of this all is that when this happens, they look at Brother A superior, they look at some other brother as superior, and both believers, superior and inferior, become close to the science of God's grace in Jesus Christ. Very close. All because they're trying to do this on their own strength. But the clarification from the commandments is that God says, I will put these commandments in your where, everyone? In your heart. In your heart. And all you must do is cooperate with me. We're closing this thing out. Clarification one. What's the clarification? The first one that we gave. We said that the commandments were given not so that you can keep them in order to be saved, but then one who is saved will naturally keep the commandments. Number two, we said that one cannot keep the commandments on their own strength because God's intention is to write them upon your heart, is to write them upon your mind. But there's a third clarification on the commandments that we have to give. And we pull this point from Exodus chapter 20, verse 2. God says, I am the Lord your God, who took you out of the house of Egypt, brought you out of the house of bondage. God was saying, I am a God of love. I loved you so much that I redeemed you. And anyone that knows love, catch this point carefully, everyone. Anyone that knows love knows that love has boundaries. Knows that love has what, everyone? Has boundaries. And so, for example, if you look at right here, if you look at this child right here, this is a young child. And the young child, you know, children, when they get 2 years old, 1 year old, 3, as soon as they can start walking, they start getting curious. And so because they start getting curious, they want to touch everything that's around. And so when they want to touch everything around, sometimes they want to go and put their hands on the what, everyone? They want to put their hands on the stove. And so many times as a parent, you have to set boundaries, because if you don't set those boundaries, your child is going to get what? He's going to get burnt. He's going to get hurt. And so you set boundaries for your child, not because you hate them, not because you're trying to enslave them, but because you love them. And in the same sort of way, God gave the 10 Commandments because he wanted to give boundaries, not because he hates, not because he enslaves, but because he wants to protect, because he loves. And so he gave the commandments as boundaries. Or for example, if you're driving on the highway, when you're driving on the highway, many times when you're driving, sometimes you may be on the road. And as you're on the road, some of you, you guys know that you're not strong enough, but you want to be strong enough, and you drive when you're tired anyway. And so you're tired and you're driving, and as you're tired and driving, something that the law has done is that they put what we call boundaries on the side of the road. Because when they put those boundaries, when you're driving, at least when you're veneering off the path, it can be, oh man, I'm falling off. Get back on track. You know what I'm saying? And fall back, getting back on track. But these boundaries are set in place because the boundaries are there and are meant to help you. The boundaries are there and meant to protect you. The third clarification about the 10 Commandments is that because God is a God of love, God gave the 10 Commandments as a boundary for the well-being and protection of Israel, and by extension, by the protection and well-being of those in Austin, Texas. And of course, those in the whole world. And so the commandments are there as a boundary for the well-being and protection of individuals. And so if the 10 Commandments are there for a boundary and a well-being, then how can we look at these, or even if you look at Deuteronomy 10 verse 13, this is what Jesus says. He says, oh, that they had such a heart in them, that they would fear me and always keep my commandments, that it might be well for them and with their children forever. It was there for their benefit. The boundaries were set there for their well-being. And so if the 10 Commandments were given because God wanted to set boundaries to protect you, then when you look at commandment number 1, why would you want to do away with commandment number 1? It's there to protect you. It's there to help you. It's there for your well-being. Why are you commandment 2? Well, we don't want to do away with that. It's there for my boundary. It's there to help me. It's there to protect me. Commandment number 3, it's there for my boundary to protect me. Even commandment number 4, we'll be spending some time on that tomorrow. I will keep your Sabbath. Is there as a boundary. It's there to protect me. Or even commandment number 5, commandment number 6, especially commandment number 6, so that people are not taking away other people's lives, is there for a boundary. It's there to protect me. The rest was 7, 8, 9, and 10. God never did away with any of his 10 commandments. And so group 1 says, oh man, the commandments are abolished. It can't be that way because they're there as boundaries to protect me and for my well-being. And group 2 is like, well, it was there for my salvation. Well, but God gave the commandments after he had saved the children of Israel. And so it was not there to keep it for my salvation. But as I am saved, God will lead me to keep his various commandments. It's there for my boundaries. It's there for my protection. Is everyone clear? If you're clear, say clear. 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 We had 3 clarifications on the commandment. 3 clarifications. And this is a summary of them. Number 1, God never gave the commandments to keep in order to be saved. But the one who is saved will naturally keep his commandments. God never intended for the commandments to be kept in our own strength. But through a relationship with Christ, he will put it in our hearts. Number 3, God gave the commandments as boundaries for a well-being to our soul. We discovered all of that from Exodus chapter 20, verse 2. Now, in closing, if you look in Exodus chapter 20, that's where the 10 Commandments were given. If you look in Exodus chapter 25, that's where the sanctuary was built. In other words, sins were forgiven. And so in Exodus 20, the law is given. But in Exodus 25, a plan is put in place so that sins can be forgiven. And here's my question for you. Why? Why would God give the commandments first before he will build the sanctuary? Why wouldn't he build the sanctuary, then give the commandments? Why would he give the commandments first and then say, make me a sanctuary? Remember, we're talking about Operation Blueprint. We're saying that God's blueprint is found in the sanctuary. This is coming home. And God gives the commandments first. Then he gives the sanctuary. Remember, the commandments is where the law was given. The sanctuary is where sins are forgiven. Why would God do something like that? Very simple. This is why. When an Israelite would leave that campground and would go about in his daily life, and those Israelites would walk around, those 10 commandments would be there staring them in the face. And every time they would look at those 10 commandments, those 10 commandments were there to point out to them that here is your sin, here is your fault, here is your imperfection. And every time they would look at a commandment, they may look at commandment number 1, and the commandment 1 will tell them, no, you are a sinner. And commandment number 2 will tell them, no, you are a sinner. And each and every time they will look at the commandment will do something special. The law will reveal their need for cleansing. Their law will reveal their need for a Savior. It's almost like a mirror. I wake up in the morning, and when I wake up, and all the ladies, go to the bathroom, you go to the mirror. Go to the mirror. As soon as you go to the mirror, you look yourself in the mirror, and the mirror is there. There's nothing wrong with that mirror. The mirror is not broken. The mirror is not dirty. Something wrong with you. So you check in the mirror, and the mirror says, hey, you got some crust in your eyes. Mirror looks, especially for the ladies, and say, hey, you got a terrible hair day. The mirror looks and says, hey, you have some uncleanliness in your nose. The mirror looks and says, hey, your hair needs to get brushed. The mirror looks and says, hey, your teeth are looking really yellow. The mirror looks at you, and though the mirror is good, the mirror is perfect, the mirror is faultless, what the mirror does is that it shows you all your faults. It shows you all your imperfections. It shows you all of your impurities. But here's the trick about the mirror. The mirror can show you all your faults, your impurities, and imperfections, but it can never fix all your faults, your impurities, and your imperfections. And in the same sort of way, if you read in Romans chapter 3 and verse 23 and verse 20, the Bible says, through the law will show you all your faults. The law will show you all your faults, all your blemishes, and all your imperfections. But even though the law will show you all your faults, all your blemishes, and all your imperfections, the law never has the capability to fix all your faults, to fix all your mistakes, and to fix all your blemishes. It just shows you that you have a problem. And when you see that you have a problem, and when you recognize that you have a need, then first of all, you may run to some psychology books. And the psychology books may try to fix you, but then the psychology books wouldn't work. Then the law will keep showing you have more boogers in your eyes. And then you will run off to some other new age experience and say, look, I'm going to go and do this. But you would recognize it never has the capability to fix you. Until you come to the point and you recognize that nothing can fix you. Jesus fixed me. Jesus fixed me. The law was put in place to show you your need so you can go to Jesus and you can say, Jesus, I need you to fix me. What's the key for a better society? It's when you all here look at these 10 commandments and you see your imperfections and your impurities. And you say, I of my own self cannot fix myself. And you go to Jesus and you say, Jesus, fix me. Jesus, fix me. Brother Ruffy has a song. And the song is so fitting. Because the song describes how Jesus fixes us. He may not fix us through the ways we want to do it, but he fixes us through his amazing grace. And through his grace, he can fix us. Through his grace, he can make us different. Through his grace, he can make us new. And the song says, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that is saved a wretch like me. That's the point of the law. The point of the law is to show you that you are a wretch. I once was lost. That's the point of the law. The point of the law says is to show you that you are lost. You once were blind. The point of the law is to show you that once you were blind. But the point of the law is to say, go to Jesus. Because if you are blind, if he touches your eyes, you can proclaim, now I see. Bless us with a song.